Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started today, I want to let you guys know that this episode is brought to you by the online course, Creating a Meaningful Life. Now, this course is the culmination of 20 years of work and research by my personal mentor and university professor, Linda Levine, and myself. Now, in it, we teach not only the skills and strategies that we've used and taught and which are being used by life coaches all over the world to create a life of fulfillment and balance, but we also go into how you can design your lifestyle, how you can improve in every aspect, all 8 of the aspects that make a complete and rich life. And really, we share a lot of our wisdom. So if you've been inspired by the show, by some of the guests on here who seem to have these incredibly rich, fulfilling lives, I do encourage you to check it out. And of course, it is backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. So to take advantage of a special coupon for listeners of this podcast, visit jle.vi/meaning. All right, here we go with the show. This episode is brought to you by Organifi. You know, the one thing that literally every single diet and nutrition expert that we've had on the show seems to agree on is that we need to eat more veg and get our greens and consume all natural products. But let's be honest. How many of us actually have the time? Well, recently I had the opportunity to meet some of the folks over at Organifi, and I've been absolutely blown away by them and their product. You see, Organifi is an organic superfood green juice powder that literally covers all your nutritional bases without having to eat 5 bowls of kale. It saves you loads of time, loads of money, and a lot of chewing. And really all you have to do is add water and drink it. So to check it out and save an incredible 20% off your first order, visit Organifi.com. That's Organifi.com and use coupon code SUPERHUMAN at checkout. Hey there, my little super friends, and welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. You guys, before we get started, I'm going to read you a review. It is from Reju from the Netherlands, who says, "Invaluable source of knowledge. Hey, Jonathan, I just listened to your 100 episode recap. I've tuned into all the episodes, and it has been a wonderful journey. Your recap made me realize how much I've learned through your podcast and how much my life has improved from implementing the many golden nuggets from your show. I hope you continue your wonderful work, and I want to thank you with all my heart. Cheers from the Netherlands, Emiel." Wow, so thank you so much, Emiel. That review made it worth all the hell I went through for that 100 episode recap. And if you guys haven't left a review, please do. Even if it's not as wonderful a review as that one, I still do appreciate receiving them. Guys, on to today's episode. Today we are joined by Jake Ducey, a 3-time author and speaker on the topics of leadership, human potential, and motivation. So Jake is actually much younger than you'd imagine, but his list of accomplishments and insights is actually quite impressive. He's worked with some of the world's largest corporations. He's spoken to over 500,000 people, which is very impressive if you ask me. And he's received praise from such greats as Jack Canfield, who called him an inspiration. If you guys don't know who Jack Canfield is, well, Google him. So all that is very impressive, and I think in this episode, you are going to learn a lot. You are going to hear about inspiration, purpose, fear, life philosophies, and a whole lot more. You'll definitely see that Jake's youthful energy is a breath of fresh air, and it's really a reminder just of the power of positivity and persistence. He shares with us his story. You know, it wasn't easy for him, as it isn't easy for so many successful people. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy what he has to say. So without any further ado, let me welcome to the show, Mr. Jake Ducey. Mr. Jake Ducey, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
Mr. Jonathan, I'm doing great as well. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. An absolute pleasure. So, Jake, I watched your TED Talk. I have to admit, I don't always watch guests' TED Talks. Sometimes I just find that I can't get into it. I don't have the time, but yours pulled me. I really appreciated it. So tell me a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are for those who didn't get a chance to watch that TED Talk.
Yeah, man. Well, I think every one of us can relate to that feeling of, am I meant for something more? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Is this all? And I'm sure you had that calling, which prompted you to make this podcast, and the people listening have more than likely had that feeling. Now, mine was as a 19-year-old freshman in college studying economics class, and I asked my teacher why we couldn't audit the Federal Reserve, which seems like a legitimate question in economics class. Only the result was everyone in the class arguing with me because they just wanted to memorize the information. They didn't want to have a creative discussion about problems that we're inheriting for our generation, which if it was a poetry class or a Chinese class, then I would have been off the wall. That wouldn't have been a good question to ask, but it was economics. And my teacher basically told me to shut up and to memorize the textbook. And I stormed out of class and I realized it wasn't a conducive place for my learning. And I was like, is this all I'm supposed to do? Is this all I'm here for? And it wasn't more than 6 months later that I took a few $1,000s that I'd saved and did some vagabond backpacking around the world, which led me to self-publish a book. No one would publish it. It was called Into the Wind, about my travels, which ended up selling a lot of copies. And when it hit its first 10,000 copies, Penguin Random House picked up a couple other books. And what my work is about is, I think the world has brainwashed us into believing in limitations that really aren't so. And my work is about inviting people to question their limitations and question who they really are and what they really want and why they're here. Because I'm a big believer in Winston Churchill has a quote, and he says, if we did the things that we are actually capable of doing, actually is the key word, then we would astonish ourselves. And that's the work that I'm involved in. And that's where it's led me around the world, and connecting to awesome people like you and having the opportunity to meet some new people from around the world that are listening.
Super cool. So let me ask this, because you're right. I did have that exact moment. And for me, it was a low point that should have been a high point. I had just sold a company and come into a bunch of money. And I had that same moment of like, well, I'm not happy and I don't feel like my life has purpose. What was that moment like for you?
Well, I think it was similar. I think for most 19-year-olds, I was on a college basketball scholarship. So for most 19-year-olds, especially athletes, it's supposed to be that fun time, right? But I was like, I'm partying more to avoid my life. And so it was the same thing. I felt crazy because I thought everyone seems so happy and excited and all. I'm here and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So it was similar to you in that I actually ended up losing a lot of my friends, almost all of them that I grew up with, and a lot of them in college too that I just met. And, you know, my mom thought I was crazy. And I think we all feel like that when we want to answer this calling, or like we're finally listening to ourselves rather than, you know, the voices in our head. And I think that that's an exciting place to be in when we do feel uncomfortable and we do feel that maybe that bit of depression or anxiety about our lives, because, you know, that's an indicator that can push us in a new direction, I believe.
Sure. And so, as you know, I do learning, right? So I'm the learning guy, and I'm so fascinated whenever I meet someone like yourself who throws out a number like 19. A lot of people say like, oh, he's a genius and stuff like that. And what I say is that guy learned a lot in a very little amount of time, because you're now going around the world inspiring people who've been on this planet for 2, 3, maybe even 4 times as long as you, and yet you have wisdom and knowledge to share with them. So I want to ask you a little bit about how you learn and how you've learned so much and been able to share so much in such a short period of time. You're now 24, as I understand.
I'm 25.
Oh man, getting up there.
Yeah.
Getting up there.
You know, I like this quote. I forget who says it, but everybody is a genius, but the world de-geniuses you. You were talking about genius. I think everyone is. We're just de-genius. And that's why I said brainwash yourself before the world does. So how do I learn? I mean, I learned to write. I think some people find it interesting. I learned how to write by retyping The Great Gatsby. And the reason I did that is because Hunter S. Thompson learned to write by retyping it. And at the time, he was my favorite author. And so that's how I learned how to write. So it was through models was how I learned to write.
Okay. Very, very cool. And how would you say you've learned about life?
A lot of people say, obviously, experience for sure. I mean, going out there, being 19 and having a dream and failing at it, because people think that the publishing industry is easier than it is. It's really hard. 95% of authors sell 5% of the books, and I think like 95% of authors sell, less than 250 copies of their books. So I failed a lot in the early stages. One time I made 8x11 pieces of paper, normal 8x11s, and I took like 200 or 300 copies. And I wrote out, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm published by, and I wrote my favorite publishing company. And I taped them literally my entire wall. Every part of my house was covered. It was pretty crazy. And I ended up through, just the way things work out to get to the founder's house, who also lives in San Diego where I live. And I thought for sure they were publishing my book. I told all my friends, I told like everyone, like, this is it, I'm published, I told you guys. And they took my manuscript, and a week later they denied me. And I had to pull, like, literally, dude, 300 pieces of these paper off the wall, crying as a 19-year-old. And so I think the failure, led me also to learn through experience, because when you have something you care about, you learn a lot quicker because you're willing to learn. When you don't care about something, you're not willing to learn, which was the case for me in school. I didn't care about it, so I wasn't willing to learn.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. So learning through experience. Let me ask you this. What would you say today is your superpower?
Probably empathy. I'm really a sensitive person, and I think that aids me in my profession because a lot of it is work with people. So it helps me to relate to them and connect, and also just read people, which is valuable in my particular line of work.
Absolutely. And is that something you think that is an innate skill, or something also that you have learned along your journey?
I think that I'm not like super big on these innate skills, because I believe you can learn anything. So I think that it's just come from the experience of wanting something really bad and feeling like I was meant for something more, and being made fun of and failing at it and going through the tough times, because the work that I do is people on a similar journey. So I think it's been developed just through experience.
So tell me this, Jake, because you've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. What would you say is really the biggest thing that's holding most people back?
A few things. I'd say first, people think they shouldn't feel fear, I think, and that holds a lot of us back. Like, especially in this industry, everyone's probably heard this term, fear is false evidence appearing real. It's not real. Well, it actually is real, because every time you think a thought or believe something, you create a chemical in your brain, and your nervous system responds to it. So whether the fear is really that legitimate or not and will actually ruin your life, that's debatable. But the fact is, on a physiological level, the fear is real. And I think that there's a false idea push that you should be fearless. Now, some of it is marketing and sales tactics. So you buy somebody's book or program, this is going to make you fearless or whatever. And it's just not true, in my opinion. And in my experience talking to thousands of people, I think Nelson Mandela has a beautiful quote: courage is the absence of fear. It's when you're scared and you just do something anyways. Right. And so I think a lot of times we beat ourselves up thinking we shouldn't feel fear. And I think that is a big inhibitor in our lives.
Absolutely. So how would you say we overcome that fear?
By recognizing what fear is. Through human evolution, we've needed fear. And, our brain needed to protect our great ancestors because we had to run from giant things that could eat us. We constantly had impending threats on our lives. But we generally, obviously, there are instances today where people do have legitimate impending threats on their lives based off of where they live, and they're afraid of bombs coming off and things like that. That does happen. And there are people that are struggling just to find something in their stomach. That is true. But for the people listening to this, in a large part of the world, there are not impending threats on our lives, but that part of our brain hasn't evolved. And so it looks for things to protect us. Mm-hmm. And when you understand this, you can see that often the mind plays tricks on us. I always use the analogy of when you're little and you think there's a monster under your bed. Now you may be listening and maybe you're a parent right now and you have a kid and that's happened recently, or maybe you remember when you were a kid and you thought there was a monster under your bed. Your hands were sweaty, your heart was beating. You were convinced, you were absolutely sure there was a monster under your bed. You screamed for your mom or your dad or whoever was, adult was in the house. And maybe they were upset because it's the second time it happened in the last 3 hours tonight and they're trying to get some sleep. And then they grab you out of the bed and they say, look under the bed. And then you're like, oh yeah, there's not a monster. And then as soon as you faced that fear, then it alleviated. And what's happening is you believe there was a monster under your bed. You believe this thought. It created a chemical reaction. It went through your nervous system and your hands got sweaty. Your heart started beating faster. You totally changed into a different physiological state. So you believed what was happening. And I think when we grasp that that part of our brain hasn't evolved, one of the large purposes of our brain is to protect us. And so we're constantly looking for impending threats in our lives. And now we think that if we go ask that person out, or we go start our dream business, or we go face our fears, or we go do that thing everyone says we shouldn't do, we think that thing is going to kill us. And chances are it won't, but we believe that thought. And it creates a physiological reaction. And I think when you understand fear like that, then it has less of a power, because you recognize that inspired challenges and inspired fears and challenges that you have to face to live in your highest values are actually a necessity to live the best life.
Awesome. So is it kind of one of these situations where just shining light on it, light is the best disinfectant, as they say, and just shining light on it is a large part of the work, really, to alleviating?
I don't know if we alleviate it. And I think that no matter what, it's going to be hard. And it's like, It's easy to say, yeah, if you're aware of the fear, then it won't be scary anymore. And like people are listening are like, damn it, but that didn't help me.
Right.
I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be hard. But I think when we can put it in perspective and really examine the worst case scenario, a lot of people say not to do that, focus on the positive. But Stoic philosophy, of course, is but there is a big portion of it where Seneca talks about examining the worst thing that could happen and really looking at it. And I think when we can put things in perspective, it may not debilitate us quite like the fear was before we could step back and examine it for what it is.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder, Jake, if you could share with us a fear that you've had to overcome along your journey.
I'll tell you right now, man, I just hired 3 new partners, employees, whatever you want to call it. Sam Walton would call them associates. 3 new people to my team. Mm-hmm. And that's really scary because I've been self-employed. Now I'm a business owner and I have salaries, and now my cash flows, I just started in January. My cash flow has been a little bit lower, about to launch some new projects, just also invested a bunch of money into some new systems for my business. So that's scary to me, and it's a big challenge. And now I have more responsibility and I have to look out for people, and it's scary and hard. And I feel a lot of stress around that. And I'd like to tell you the business is every day I'm excited, and it's like some days I'm not. Some days I'm like, damn, I just want to stay in bed and read. And I think that's the whole battle of self-mastery. The way I've been trying to put that into perspective is I learned about, the difference between a normal challenge and an inspiring challenge, which I alluded to earlier, that an inspiring challenge, though it may not always be inspiring, it's in alignment with our highest values. And that actually stress isn't always a bad thing. There's 2 forms of stress that I was learning about. Eustress, it's spelled EU stress, versus normal stress. And eustress is like a healthy stress that can actually help you grow into your highest ideals. And I've been trying to reframe that in my mind constantly and, just recognize that I'm going to fail. And some days I'm not going to really be that present mentally, and I'll have some off days, and facing all of those fears around money and responsibility and managing other people. And damn, I hope this works out now. All of those fears, we all have them. And I have it at this very moment in my life.
Absolutely. I've had that fear, so I appreciate you sharing it. And I constantly am going through that fear. We also just hired new people, and there's always fear. What if I don't have enough work for these people? What if we don't have enough money for these people? Obviously, if you're listening to this, don't worry. We can pay your salary next month. But, but I know that fear. So I want to ask you another question, Jake, which is you share a really on the topic of kind of success, especially in business, you share a very powerful message about happiness and success. And it's one that I think people really need to hear again and again and again and again. So could you share that with us?
Well, I just believe that you can create a really fulfilling career and be extremely successful. It's not mutually exclusive. And also, there's a lot of people in more the personal development or self-development or having spiritual, quote unquote, awakening, psychological transformations that think maybe, career success or money is exclusive from, living a very joyous and fulfilled life. And I believe, that it's all one and the same, and everything that we do can be an extension of who we are and our highest values. Mm-hmm. And I believe, why would I settle for something else? Now, I know it takes a lot of time in order to get to that point in a lot of instances, at least it has for me. And, it can take a lot of time. Like my girlfriend, she was a manager at a clothing store for a lot of years and, would work over 50 hours, but she always wanted to be an artist ever since she was a kid. She didn't really think it was possible. And she kind of had the belief system of, that they were mutually exclusive. It was a hobby. She couldn't turn it into a profession, And she didn't have the money also, so being realistic. And oftentimes that's a lot of obstacles for people is that, they don't have any capital to start their own business or any cushion in order to pay the rent and their necessities while they build their dream business that actually fulfills them. So with her, I had her treat her job like an investor. And so she stopped buying things she didn't need, and she started saving a really high percentage of the money for quite a few months from her managerial job, created like a 5-month cash cushion, and then use that to fund her dreams. So I think that they're not mutually exclusive. And if you are patient and you are strategic, you can have one and the same. Now, it doesn't mean every single day is always going to, be easy, which I was saying earlier. In my opinion, it's not always easy. And I'm definitely not the believer, like a lot of people online, entrepreneurs online building brands are like, I love working 18 hours a day, every day. I'm like, I don't. Yeah, no. So I think
definitely on the same page with you there. So, all right. I like that. Jake, one thing, total random question, but in your email signature, you sign your emails, miracles are normal. What does that mean?
It means a lot of things to me. If you actually really look at some crazy statistics or crazy ideas about being alive, it's pretty remarkable to begin with, and I think is a miracle and a blessing in and of itself. I mean, think about the fact that, which is crazy, I didn't even believe it. You have millions of miles of veins in your body that your blood pumps through. Mm-hmm. You don't have to tell your heart to beat. It's just you have an unconscious mechanism that does all of these digestive systems and beats your heart. And you have psychologists say 65,000 thoughts in a day. We're the perfect distance from the sun, a little bit further and we'd live on an ice ball and we would never be alive in the first place. A little bit closer and we'd have a fireball. There's just all these remarkable things. The fact that we have all of these capabilities today with the internet, we truly do. We live in a stressful time, right? If you scroll your Facebook news feed today, you'll probably see a lot of people that have lost hope. But I really believe that this is not only the most opportune time in human history to create a large impact, a successful life, make a lot of money doing what you love, but also live adventurous and fulfilling. But just the mere fact that we're here at all, it's really amazing if you consider it. And so to me, miracles are totally normal. It's a total regularity. What's his name? Wayne Dyer has a quote. I'm realistic. I expect miracles, and I do every day. I expect the solutions to all my problems to be solved without my conscious effort. I expect the perfect people to walk into my lives, whether it's friends or whether it's business partners or clients. I expect the money to show up. I expect it. And that doesn't mean I don't have times when I don't, but I know we live in a world of miracles, so I open myself up to be in alignment with the greater flow of the universe.
I love that. Jake, what would you say is your overarching life philosophy? Because we've talked a lot about, you have so many kind of unique and interesting ideas. What would you say is the guiding philosophy that you live your life by? It's a tough one, right?
The guiding philosophy that I live my life by. Okay, so I'd have to say that it's not like a quote by someone or something like that. I'd have to say it's my larger vision for my life, which is typed up on my refrigerator, and I read it every single morning. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of specifics in that, but that's really my guiding philosophy. I want to live this vision that I've imagined myself that I could become, and how I make my day-to-day decisions, what I say yes and no to, are all about moving and creating that on a deeper and deeper level. So I'd say really my philosophy that I live by is a 20-year vision that I wrote out, it's even more than 20-year vision, but you know, this larger vision for my entire life.
Tell me, can we ask what that is?
Yeah, not all specifics. You know, I do believe in keeping some things to ourselves, but you know, I want to be what I'm doing now, but reaching millions and millions and millions of people. I want to be one of the most impactful teachers on the mind and human potential in the world. And, you know, like I have an Australia tour in May, a Canada tour over summer, but I want thousands of people at every event, and I want to reach and impact as many people as I can. And I want to be able to drop $500,000 on a massive high school and college tour and out of my own money, and be able to reach 500, 700,000 youth, which I can with the bureaus that I work with. But it's to really pull off a major tour like that takes some significant funding. Mm-hmm. I want hundreds of rental properties and to have a massive net worth that exceeds $50 million. An over 40 acre, fully sustainable ranch style farm property on over 40 acres in the Northwest with a pool, spa, which are both salt water, steam room, sauna, and beautiful views of nature. You know, I have a lot of specifics to that, and I live in that fully sustainable ranch style farm property. It's going to have a Tesla battery in the garage and solar on top. It'll power the whole place. It'll be totally sustainable. I want to be able to live sufficiently in that if I didn't want to go to a grocery store or the economy collapsed, my life would resume basically as is and wouldn't be influenced. So I want to be totally self-reliant. And obviously there's more details in that, but that's it in a nutshell.
I love it. I think those are really, really great and super specific goals. So let me ask, I mean, you're the guy, you're like the happiness and success coach. So what are you going to do to get there?
Oh, just exactly what I'm doing. Patience is the biggest thing. I'm already there in my mind. I don't know if people know who Cam Newton is. You know, he's the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers in the National Football League. When they made the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Michael Strahan, Hall of Fame defensive end, interviewed him and said, "Cam, can you believe you're in the Super Bowl and you made it here? You were just playing in junior college only a few years ago." And he looks at Michael Strahan and he says, "I was a Super Bowl quarterback and a millionaire long before I was a Super Bowl quarterback and a millionaire."
Yep. Oh, it's like that Muhammad Ali quote where he says, you know, I'm the greatest of all time, but I said that even before I knew I was.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good one. So it's already a reality, and now it's just patience and consistency and, you know, and staying committed and staying in integrity to my highest values. And, you know, that's why I said 20, 30, 40-year vision. I think that a lot of times, you know, that Tony Robbins quote, I'm sure most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that patience is really the focal point, you know, it's patience and consistency and just keep growing with it.
I love that. Tell me this, Jake, do you have any specific skills or habits or routines, things that you do every day, every week, every month that you feel make you perform at a higher level?
Yeah, the one that's changed my life, I did about 3 years ago. I recorded my own hypnosis, just an audio hypnosis about my prosperity and success and growth. And I recorded it when I started I'm really interested and fascinated with the subconscious mind. And so I recorded it, just bought a mic and did it, and it changed my life. So I started sharing it with clients, and it's something I do every day and night. I actually put it up. It's just jakeshypnosis.com, so people can download it for free. And it's something that's totally changed my life, because if you have 65,000 thoughts in a day, which is approximately what psychologists tell us that we have, and that 95% of your life and my life is unconscious, meaning it's subconscious. That means out of 65,000 thoughts in a day, out of all the actions that we take, out of all the reactions and perception views we have on reality, the majority of them are unconscious. They're subconscious. They're programmed from past experiences, from teachers or from parents or from friends or from traumas or whatever. And if we can retrain those belief systems and those unconscious habits and reprogram the subconscious mind, then we can essentially program our life on autopilot to move us in our highest and best good. So that's something I was fascinated by. I tried it out. It worked for me, and I've seen it work for hundreds and hundreds of my clients. So I do that every morning and every night, and I plug it in and listen to it. It's 35 minutes long.
Awesome. I'm going to definitely check that out. I've done a lot of meditation and guided meditation, never done a guided hypnosis. That sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it's neat. It's just conditioning the mind and beyond the mind. It's conditioning us in a different way. So that's something that meditation obviously is always been a focal point, journaling, things like that. But the hypnosis is a quick way to really connect me back to my higher vision.
Very cool. Jake, I want to do some rapid fire questions with you. First and foremost, what are some products or services that you just could not do your job without? Or couldn't live without? Doesn't have to be about work.
Vegetables. Green juice. No. While I'm drinking some green juice here. I'm not super big. I'm not very tech savvy. So I don't use like any of those evergreen things. Probably just like Facebook. Facebook is my favorite social media platform. I wouldn't be able to fulfill my mission and my vision in my life in the same way if I didn't have Facebook. So I don't have tons of like tools, just books. Like books are my favorite thing. Like, if I could sit in bed all day, every day, which I do a little bit, then I would just keep reading all the time. And I do. So those are my favorite tools.
So give me a list of some books that have changed your life.
Lots, man. I mean, the recently ones that have changed my life. Last week, How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven by John DeMartini. Last night, I just finished Sam Walton's autobiography. That was a life changer.
Good one,
a couple weeks ago was Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. That was really, really, really great. Right now I'm reading a couple books on rental property investments that I know will be changing my life as I keep growing my wealth management on other aspects outside of my business. A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle was a book when I was 19 years old in college that changed my life. So that was like a book that sent me on a new direction.
Me too.
A lot of Wayne Dyer books have really changed my life. One of my favorite books is a compilation book by Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard is a really amazing philosopher that's no longer alive, but it's a compilation. It's like 12 of his books, but the two of my favorite books in there are The Power of Awareness and Out of This World. And he talks about imagination and how to harness imagination and use your subconscious mind. And he's a trippy author that I really love, and he makes a lot of sense to me. So those are some books recently. And then, of course, that A New Earth, which is not a recent one, that have really, had a profound impact on my life.
Absolutely. So, Jake, I want to be respectful of your time. Before we kind of wrap up here, where can people learn more and get in touch with you? Tell us a little bit about what you're working on next, how people can get in on this Australia tour, Canada tour you mentioned, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you're in Australia, if you just go to jakeинaustralia.com, my website's just jakeducey.com, and that hypnosis, for anyone that wants to check it out, is just jakeshypnosis.com. And then I'm on, all the social media places from YouTube to Facebook and all that fun stuff. So if you just head in online, appreciate you listening, and hopefully we'll hear from some of you.
Yeah, I hope so. So Jake, I want to close on this one question that we always ask at the end of every episode, which is if people take away really just one message and they carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
Take out an index card, a 3x5 index card, and write a 1 or 2 sentence vision for your life or your higher goals for your life, and carry it in your pocket with you everywhere that you go. You'll probably lose one, so constantly rewrite it and carry it with you everywhere you go, because when you brainwash yourself with your vision, then all of your unconscious reactions and decisions you make, and the thousands and thousands and thousands of them that we have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, will slowly but surely start to move you in the direction of that thing that you're feeding to yourself, much like, when that Drake song, Hotline Bling, came out, right? Everyone sings those songs, right? Whenever a new song comes out. Why? And it gets stuck in people's heads. Because why does it get stuck in people's heads? Because it starts to be an unconscious program that plays itself out. So if you could do the same thing, but instead of singing a chorus to a Drake or a Beyonce song, if instead you were singing the chorus of your 1 or 2 sentence vision for your life, then I think that it's changed my life. I've seen it change thousands of people's lives that I've worked with. And I think that thousands of people that have come before us have used that similar philosophy. So as an actionable task, obviously, I would invite everyone to try that. We can get really caught up in podcasts, in entertainment through insight. And we can tell ourselves, well, I'm doing all these great things because I'm listening. But if you're not applying anything you're learning, then it's almost just like flipping through 1,000 channels of cable. So I would invite everyone to grab a 3x5 card or some small piece of paper and try and distill a 1 or 2 sentence vision and carry that with you.
Couldn't agree more. So Jake, thank you so much for your time and sharing your energy. I'm winding down at the end of my day here, but you've given me a total breath of positive vibes as I go on with the rest of my evening. So I really appreciate it. And I am sure our audience got a ton out of it as well.
Cool, man. Yeah. Ciao to you in Tel Aviv.
Yes, sir. Hopefully one day come out and check it out. We'd love to have you out here.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
All right, brother. Take care.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, super friends, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you really, really enjoyed it and learned a ton of applicable stuff that can help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If so, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you found this podcast. In addition to that, we are always looking for great guest posts on the blog or awesome guests right here on the podcast. So if you know somebody or you are somebody or you have thought of somebody who would be a great fit for the show or for our blog, please reach out to us either on Twitter or by email. Our email is info@becomingasuperhuman.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.